Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
That's a nice way to spend a Thursday. Wait, is it Tuesday? Whatever, any evening, really is fine with me. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. I'd like to introduce you to my dear friends Atita Kuna and Pancharatna, and old friends. I mean not by age and age of our friendship. So I'd like to, and then
We go way back.
Go way back, yeah, very far back, yeah. And then Krishna Kanta Dasi sitting right there. She's my partner, my beloved devotional partner in life and wife. So tonight I think I promised to talk about the Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you.
Very good. Good prompt there. The Bhagavad Gita. I think the first way to start off, first of all, does everyone know how to pronounce it? Sometimes people find it difficult to pronounce. Bhagavad Gita. You want to try that?
Bhagavad
Gita.
I know you.
Is it loud enough for everyone also?
Oh, is this?
Can you all hear well enough?
I think your voice is loud enough. I don't know if the mic is doing anything. I think it's just you got a loud
Yeah, my wife says that too.
I didn't mean it that way.
Let's just put it here for looks. Okay. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're talking. Okay, well, okay, either way. Okay, so let's try that again. Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, good. Okay, so when we talk about the Bhagavad Gita, let's first speak about the three most read sacred texts in the world. You probably could have guessed that the Bible is the first most read sacred text in the world. It contains 31,000 plus verses, both New Testament and Hebrew Bible. The Quran contains 6,236 verses, so quite a bit shorter. And the Bhagavad Gita, only 700 verses. Only 700 verses. You can read the Bhagavad Gita in 2 to 3 hours. It's amazing. It's amazing. But the depth of these verses are just unfathomable. So we're going to talk about the Bhagavad Gita. But the Bhagavad Gita comes from a larger text that we'll talk about. But here's the problem. When reading the Bhagavad Gita, Westerners in particular are challenged. Because when you open the Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't sound like a scripture. It doesn't sound like a sacred text. The book of Genesis in the Bible sounds like a scripture. Look at this. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, this sounds really good, doesn't it? It's a beautiful passage. And the earth was formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while the wind from God swept over the face of the waters. I mean, this is beautiful ancient Hebrew poetry, of course translated. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Okay. Sounds like a scripture. The Gospel of Mark sounds like a scripture. The beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, as it is written in the prophet Isaiah, "See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way," and so forth. The Gospel of John is even more mystical, more mysterious, and eerie, almost eerie, with the flavor of Gnosticism. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and so on. The Quran, again, another beautiful, beautiful text. Glory to Allah, Most High, full of grace and mercy. He created all, including man. And down further, he says, so that man should understand nature, understand himself, and know Allah through his wondrous signs, and glorify him in truth, reverence, and unity. This sounds like a scripture. The Bhagavad Gita. On the field of Dharma, on the field of Kuru, assembled together, desiring to fight, were my armies, and indeed those of the sons of Pandu. How did they act, O Sanjaya? What? Excuse me? Is this a scripture? Is this a sacred text? Is it a text of yoga? The answer to all three questions is in the affirmative. It is, but one has to know how to read it. Okay? Now, part of the problem, we're going to return to this very first verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Yes, that's brilliant. Okay. Here we go. Bhagavad Gita is only 700 verses, as I've said, but it is extracted from a text that is the greatest epic poem in the world, known as the Mahabharata, of 100,000 verses, which is more than all the three main sacred texts put together. So of these 700 verses, we have them spread among 18 chapters, but most of the verses are spoken by Krishna, 575 verses of the 700. So one does not have to be confused by that, but the first verse that you just heard was spoken by Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was an evil king. Let me explain the background of the story from which the Bhagavad Gita arose. So in a way, you're kind of, the Westerner particularly, is stepping into a story that has already begun. How disconcerting is that? Have you ever had a friend say, hey, come on over, I'm in the middle of a film, just sit down and watch the rest of it with me. I mean, that is a cruel thing to do, okay? How can you watch a film from the middle? You have no basis, no foundation. So in a way, to read the Bhagavad Gita requires some commentary, some introduction, and the founder of the Krishna consciousness movement provides an extraordinary introduction to the Gita. You may be wondering, why did I publish a translation of the Bhagavad Gita with HarperCollins? After using my spiritual teacher's Gita in the university setting for over 35 years, yeah, I'm old, I've been around for a while, been around the block, but teaching in the university for over 35 years, I found that people misunderstood Prabhupada's Gita. And I needed, and even people sometimes challenged the veracity of the translation and so on. So I wanted to prove that if I did a strict academic translation, that it ends up in the same place. And that was my motive. The background story, friends, is that there was the great Kuru dynasty in India, and there was the great King Bharata. Everyone loved King Bharata. He was a very lovable leader. Everyone loved him. And he had two sons. The elder son, King Dhritarashtra, who speaks the first verse of the Gita, and King Pandu. King Dhritarashtra was congenitally blind. He was blind from birth, and he was also morally blind, as it happens. And he had sons, many, many sons, known as the Kauravas. And King Pandu was like his father, very good. Everyone loved King Pandu. And he had 5 sons, known as the Pandavas. Dhritarashtra's sons were 99 in number, 99 sons. So my theory is, and please don't repeat this to anybody, I think he had more than one wife. I honestly do. This is just my opinion. I can't verify this, but even if he had 3 wives and 11 sets of triplets, how likely is that? So, triplets, very rare, okay? I happen to be one of a triplet. No, I'm lying. No, it's rare to ever meet a triplet. Okay? So I am not a triplet. Okay, I mean, there may be multiple personalities and all that, but there's not others of me. Okay. So anyway, the 99 sons of Dhritarashtra were kind of evil like their father. So every king wants to know, to whom will I leave my kingdom when I die? All the power, the responsibility, the leadership, the wealth. Well, usually it's the elder or eldest son. Well, Bharata just couldn't do it. He had to leave it to King Bharata. Oh, ouch. That was a big, big ouch for King Dhritarashtra. So, King Pandu, though, died in early death, and his sons, the 5 Pandavas, were too young to assume the throne. Well, no problem. Uncle Dhrit moved in with his 99 sons and probably 20 wives. He was blind, so I don't even think he knew how many wives. Again, this is just theory. This is theory. Please don't repeat this to anybody. I just think I'm a scholar of the tradition. This is just theory. We work with theories. So anyway, he moved in with all his wives, all his sons and children, and don't worry, the kingdoms back then were big part of Brooklyn. I mean, there was huge property. So there's no problem. But there was tension between the cousins, the Kauravas, and the Pandavas, especially as the Pandavas grew up and they could assume the throne. One of them could assume the throne. And they challenged their uncle to step down and let them assume the throne, and he would refuse. So he refused to step down. And so the Pandavas and the Kauravas came into a dice match to determine who should stay in the kingdom or who should leave. And if the loser of the dice match would be banished from the kingdom for 13 years. Well, as it turns out, the Pandavas lost because the Kauravas cheated. But they were such gentlemen, they conceded, defeat. They left for 13 years, and they came back, and the kingdom was in worse disarray. I mean, there's nothing like a terrible leader. So they tried every negotiation, and I won't go into the details of the story, but it just ended up needing to face a battle for the kingdom. And therefore, they meet on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Duryodhana was the eldest of the 99 sons and the leader of the army, and Arjuna was one of 5 generals of the Pandavas. And the Gita opens up when all these men gather on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That's where the Gita begins. Friends, why is this important? Did you have a...
Yes, I want to get close. The Kauravas had 99. The Pandavas had how many?
The Pandavas were 5
Okay.
in number.
All right.
Kauravas were 99. And the lead Kaurava was named Duryodhana, which, by the way, one way to understand that in Sanskrit is dirty fighter. Can you imagine having a baby? Oh, dirty fighter. Dirty fighter, you're so cute. Dirty fighter. Who names their kid dirty fighter? Anyway, whatever. Okay. It also can mean difficult to fight, difficult to defeat. But still, that's difficult to defeat. You're gonna be really difficult. Anyway, I'm just, anyway, these warrior families had ways of naming their kids. So, anyway, they showed up on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and that is the opening of the Gita. Now, why? Why? Notice that the other 3 sacred texts that we looked at, the other scriptural texts, they open up with a front-loaded information about God. They tell you who God is, what he does, how he should be honored and worshipped, right? But the Gita doesn't. Gita opens up on a battlefield with a conflict. And what this means, though, and the genius of the Gita is that it opens up not with front-loading God and a particular relationship with God, as these traditions do, beautiful traditions, but it's front-loading the human condition, which is universal. Is this me or am I? No, don't worry about it. I hear things.
We're just
We all.
This is New York.
It's an age thing, you get old. I'm pushing 100 right now. So I hear things, rumbling, buildings and all that sort of thing. Don't worry about it.
The G train.
What's that?
The G train.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. So, yeah, right. So, in any case, I don't know if you know, but chess was invented in India. And this is the way wars were fought. They were fought with great chivalry. And just like chessmen, warriors fought warriors. No civilians were involved, no old men like me, no children, just warriors fought warriors. And they even had a clock. Not like that, but the celestial bodies told them when to start the war. So the war is about to commence. And here is King, I managed to sneak into the palace, and I took a picture of the blind king. Well, you can laugh all you want, but I took this for you folks, okay? So here's the King Dhritarashtra, blind king, speaking to his minister, Sanjaya, who's the narrator of the Gita, who's the opposite of the king. Sanjaya not only could see and hear perfectly, but he could see and hear 80 miles north what was going on the battlefield, and could hear the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And that is the whole of the Bhagavad Gita. What transpires on that, you can see up there in the left-hand corner, a chariot with horses, with Krishna in the front and Arjuna in the back, and he is relating through his heart. You can see his hand holding up to his chest. Through his heart, he is able to perceive and hear everything that goes on between Krishna and Arjuna. So, yes.
What is his name again with the hand on his heart?
Oh, Sanjaya.
Who's
Sanjaya.
He's a narrator.
So he's the narrator, but he functions as his minister, the king's minister. But he is narrating while he's in front of his king.
Is he related to the king at all?
I don't believe he is. He's just a minister. He's a lowly minister, but look how brilliant he was. This vision was granted to him by Vyasa, but we won't get into that right now. Vyasa Prasada, Shrutavan, etc., etc. But a special, empowered editor, compiler of the Vedas, empowered him to be able to hear and see what was going on the battlefield. And then this compiler of the Vedas wrote it down for, well, you and me. That's how we have it, okay? So So I happen to be, I got a close-up of Krishna, and you can laugh all you want, okay? Okay? But here's Krishna, and here's Arjuna, blowing their conches. And this is how the war begins, with the blowing of conches. Conches are, if you've ever heard of conch, we blow conches right here in the temple at the start of the puja, or arti, or rituals in front of the altar. It's a very, it can shake you. It has a, yeah, kind of shake you like. Anyway, other things shake you.
Like the G train.
Yeah, the so-called G train. Everything else. Okay. So the Gita begins again with the human condition, and that is universal. What God's name is, who God is, all these things are wonderful. These are beautiful traditions that we spoke about earlier. But the Gita's genius is to speak first to the human condition, the situation in which we all find ourselves. Our own battlefields. We have our own battlefields in which we have to negotiate what to do. Now, Arjuna, one of the Pandavas, was being driven by Krishna in his chariot. And he noticed, let me see what I do in the next step. Okay, he came into it, what could easily be described as an irresolvable ethical conflict. And I'll tell you what the conflict is. He first says, halfway through the first chapter, I look upon those about to engage in battle, who are assembled here, desiring to please the evil-minded son, that's Duryodhana, the dirty fighter, evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra in battle. So as a warrior, he's like ready to go to war and protect people. And that's a good warrior, right? Good warrior. That's who you want to protect society. But look what happens. Halfway down, seeing my own relations, O Krishna, standing ready to fight, my limbs are sinking down and my mouth has become very dry. Also, my body trembles with the G train. And it's here, but it's not up there. Trembles, and the hairs of my limbs stand on end. Ladies and gentlemen, this is clinical depression. If you ever find yourself in this state, you need to see someone. Well, there was Krishna on his chariot, but he wasn't really seeing Krishna. Not really, not yet. So this is the conflict. On the one hand, he's there to protect society from evildoers. On the other hand, oh my God, people I love and revere are on the opposing side. He goes through, so he turns to Krishna and dumps the contents of his mind. For 22 verses, he is dumping all the troubles in his heart on Krishna, who only speaks 5 words the whole time. He sits and he listens. It's a good thing to do when someone's troubled. Just listen first. Listen. He's saying things like, Krishna, you know what? I think I'll let them kill me, because why do I want to live in a world where I have no one to love? Human beings can't live in a world where there's no one to love. Human beings need love. So he thought, maybe I should just let them kill me. But then he said, well, maybe, but I need to kill them because they've done such evil. But then I'm going to live in a kingdom with the blood of my loved ones staining the kingdom. How can I do that? So he didn't know whether to live, whether to die, and he just threw his bow down and sat down in his chariot. That's called depression, right? You're pressed down.
Or an irrevocable ethical dilemma.
That's right. And look, I caught him right in the middle of this situation.
Wait, who's the blue?
That's Krishna.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he's doing fine. Look at him. He's
It's
fine.
arms depressed.
And look at Arjuna. He's about to collapse in his chariot. Okay? So it was a little risky going up this close. Okay. Then the final verse in the chapter is Sanjaya narrates, thus speaking in the midst of conflict, literally and figuratively speaking in the midst of conflict that he could not resolve, like you said, an irresolvable ethical conflict. Arjuna sat upon the seat of the chariot. Casting aside his bow and arrow, his mind was tormented by sorrow. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you think about it, any thoughtful person in this world finds him or herself or their self in the midst of conflict. Even as privileged as we may be, this world is filled with so much suffering. So much suffering. And, you know, I mean, even coming up the New Jersey Turnpike, that was, to us, that was a battle. That was our Kurukshetra, coming up the New Jersey Turnpike. You should try it sometime. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, okay? So don't do it if you don't have to, but we had to get here. Okay, so I'm sitting up on top of an elephant to get this shot. And here they are, Krishna and Arjuna, and basically it's a sacred dialogue, Dharmyam Samvadam, between Arjuna and Krishna. Finally, in the beginning of the second chapter, Arjuna turns to Krishna, and this is key. By the way, I need to tell you that the first chapter is titled traditionally, not in the original text, but for hundreds and thousands of years, it's been titled Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So it's a yoga. The yoga of Arjuna's depression. Now these days, yoga can be really weird, right? Dog yoga, doga,
Goat yoga.
goat yoga, beer yoga,
Beer
chocolate yoga, nude yoga. I mean, everything in the book. So actually, Krishnakanta and myself, we're thinking of opening up a yoga of depression studio.
So he was just
And the reason we didn't do it is because we would be overwhelmed with people. The first chapter is called the Yoga of Despair. The Yoga of Despair. How is despair a yoga? Well, you know, he could have taken the equivalent of Prozac in the day, some herbal, or he could turn to Krishna and find out what to do. If one's despair brings us to greater spiritual potential, then that's a yoga. Because we're connecting, we're being united with the source of healing. And that is Krishna in the Gita. So he says, Shishyas teham shadimam aham prapanam, the fourth quarter, I am your student, instruct me, for I have offered myself unto you. Now, honestly, I try to get all my university students to say this to me. I just can't get them to say it. But why should they say that to me? If Krishna were teaching the class, then I think they could say it. So, okay, so here you've got Arjuna's conflict and despair. The outer world conflict that was happening on the battlefield precipitated the conflictual inner world, and then finally the shattered innermost world of the heart. The last chapter, which I've titled The Supreme Secret of Yoga, is responding to the first chapter's parts. The outer world conflict is addressed by Krishna's teachings as the great secret. The inner world conflict that Arjuna had is addressed by the greater secret. And this is all explained, by the way, in my translation. And the greatest secret of all addresses Arjuna's shattered heart. And then concluding words. Notice there are 49 verses for the great secret, the bottom of a mountain, 14 for the greater secret, and only 3 verses for the very tip of this mountain of realization, this mountain of secrets. So it's a conversation within a conversation. Now, in the interest of time, because what's my, you're the boss, so how are we doing? Oh, you're the boss.
Yes, sir. We can go for another 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10, yeah.
10 minutes. Okay. So
15. fine.
Oh,
20,
good, I've got the marker, this is great.
Never told the
Debate here?
yeah.
15, do we have 15? Do we have 17?
You can go to another 21.
21 minutes. Okay, we have 22. Okay, I've never had to, raffle off a minute here. Okay, so let's do this. Arjuna, one thing that you're going to see when you read the Bhagavad Gita, you're going to encounter and move through 8 different relationships between Arjuna and Krishna. So it is a complex work. One needs a teacher who knows what he or she is talking about. The first relationship is a warrior to a charioteer, first half of the first chapter. Friend to a confidant, the second half of the first chapter. Disciple to a teacher, this first half of or it begins in the first half of the second chapter, as I just quickly showed you. And then finally, by the 4th chapter, a yogi to divinity. But then it gets more complicated. Karma yoga. So Arjuna learns about karma yoga, the uniting with the divine through one's actions when one perceives the divine in everything. In jnana yoga, to be connected to the total divine reality, absolute reality, or Brahman. Dhyana yoga, divinity in the heart. And then finally, bhakti yoga. These are all adding up to the ultimate, the ultimate of the ultimate. Bhakti yoga, the personal, intimate divinity, the divine that stands right in front of Arjuna. Right in front of him, that he did not know. He forgot while he was absorbed in his irresolvable dilemma. In the final chapter, Sanjaya characterizes Krishna's teachings to Arjuna as the supreme secret of yoga, Guhyam Param Yogam. What is the supreme secret of yoga? The teachings in the middle 16 chapters are complex. And again, one needs guided commentary to really appreciate them and move through. But what brings them all together? What gives the ultimate answer to all of this? What is this supreme secret of yoga? Here he is, a few verses prior to the very ending of the Gita. Sanjaya, the narrator, says, by the grace of Vyasa, that's the person who empowers him to see and hear on the battlefield and compiles the text, finally, I've heard this supreme secret of yoga from Krishna, the supreme Lord of yoga, appearing directly before my eyes, speaking it himself. So I'm going to reveal to all of you what the supreme secret of yoga is. And what I can say is, note here that Krishna is known by this epithet, Yogeshwara, the supreme Lord of yoga. So apparently, divinity does yoga. Divinity has his own yoga. What does that mean? Divinity is united and embraces us, each one of us, with absolute reality without, the absolute reality within our hearts, all around us. So, respectively, Brahman, Paramatman, and Vishwarupa. You all don't hear that, right?
No.
Okay, well, whatever, that's fine. I hear a lot of stuff as I'm getting older. That's fine. Okay, so the supreme secret of yoga is this: the Lord, the divinity, absolute reality, however you want to call it, is already embracing us, without, within, and all around us. Yoga, our yoga, is the return embrace. It's the return embrace. Now, I'm going to show you how that is expressed here in the Gita. Okay? Do you want to see how Krishna reveals the supreme secret of yoga? You ready for this? Put on your seatbelts, especially in this room. I don't know what's going on underneath. Okay, so let's move along in the interest of time. let me take you to, well, let me give you one thing about the first verse that I think is really important. Remember, I told you that the genius of the Gita is front-loading not divinity, but the human condition, which speaks universally. If one knows how to read this first verse, it's remarkable. On the field of Dharma, on the field of Kuru, on the field of Dharma, Dharma Kshetra, Dharma, on the field of our true, permanent inner nature. Kuru, on the field of our conditioned, impermanent external nature. Kurukshetra. Kuru, our conditioned outer nature, in juxtaposition to our true inner nature. These things come together in conflict. Yoga is to bring these two fields together in perfect harmony. Our true nature with our outer conditioned nature. In our world here, we get so distracted, we think we're only all about our outer nature, and we forget to pursue the world of our inner nature. And that is Krishna's response to Arjuna in terms of his irresolvable conflict. He basically says, and one of the powerful tacit teachings of the Gita is, you will never make this outer world perfect. It will never be perfect. In fact, it's perfectly imperfect. So you will pursue your inner nature. And he said, be a yogi. Be a yogi. Okay? So, be a yogi. But what happens when we become a yogi? What message do we ultimately hear? The supreme secret of yoga. So let's get to that. Okay, let's get to that. Because I'm going to, one thing, well, let me see here. One thing I should mention to you, that in the 11th chapter, there is a display of Krishna's might and majesty and power in the 11th chapter. A brilliant scholar in Oxford produced a Bhagavad Gita translation, which is not bad. It's interpreted in light of the Sri Vaishnava tradition. It's not bad, but where he majorly blows it is when he says in the 11th chapter, remember there are 18 chapters? In the 11th chapter, this is the ultimate message, the climactic message of the Gita is found in the 11th chapter, when Krishna shows Arjuna, at Arjuna's request, the Vishwarupa, the Virata Rupa, where Arjuna, you can see by the arrow, is now distracted by this overwhelming, this overwhelming display, and because he wanted to see, taste something of Krishna's divine power. So Richard Charles Zahner, a wonderful scholar of the 20th century, says that this is the ultimate message. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what drama have you ever seen? What book have you read? What film have you seen where they put the ultimate climactic event in the middle of the drama? Please, have you ever seen anything like that? No, where do you expect to see that? At the end. I don't know what happened to Professor Zahner. He just went a little zany. Because really, what happened? In fact, if you read the chapter 11, it's anticlimactic, because Arjuna basically says, in my colloquial terms, Krishna, okay, this is great, it's like amazing, I'm blown away, would you chill? Would you come back to the, I'm just using I'm just bringing it here to modern colloquial language. Would you chill, and please just come as you were. So it's anticlimactic, and Krishna says, what you see in front of you is actually the most precious form that anyone could realize. So it's anticlimactic. I don't know what happened. The rest of his translation is really quite good, and his commentaries, derived from a derivative of the good tradition. So anyway, he says, as a father is to a son, as a friend to a friend, as a dearly loved one to a dearly beloved, be pleased to show your loving kindness to divinity. In other words, come back to the way you were. And Krishna declared that actually that is the greatest, but the most secret form Now, moving along here. Oh, there he is. See, I took this shot, and you can see his very powerful form there. Okay, good. Now, there I got it close up there with the telephoto. Okay. Now, the last words that Krishna speaks in 18th chapter, 72nd verse, he asks Arjuna, have you heard this whole teaching, which is very complex, by the way. It is complex. Have you heard the whole thing with thought focused on the single highest point? So what is that single highest point? What is that supreme secret of yoga? Here's the verse. Have you heard this whole teaching with thought focused on the single highest point? It's a rhetorical question. Krishna wants Arjuna to understand the whole teaching that has been delivered to him in light of this single highest point. See, that's yoga, to focus on the single highest point, ekagra, which is a phrase in the Yoga Sutra, which I'm translating right now, way overdue for publication. The greatest secret of all, Krishna declares this to be. What is this greatest secret of all? Not just the greatest secret, that's already a superlative, but this is a super superlative. The greatest secret of all greatest secrets. What is that greatest secret? Are you all curious at all to know what this is? Okay. Well, we don't have time, so we're going to end now. Don't blame me. You blame these two right here. Okay, I'm gonna ignore both of them, and I'm gonna take you to the 18th chapter, the final chapter, where you would expect to find the climactic message, right? This is where you would expect to find it. Here it is. As we've seen before, we're gonna skip to it. Part 1, the great secret. Part 2, the greater secret. Part 3, the greatest secret of all. Now, let's get right to it. This verse right here, in the 18th chapter, 63rd verse, is the verse that appears right before Krishna declares his greatest secret of all, the supreme secret of yoga, that very thing by which he wants Arjuna to know the rest of his teachings. What is behind everything he says is in the next verse. And once having fully grasped this, with nothing overlooked, then you're in the position of acting fully with will, with volition. But before you were not. When you're miserable and depressed, you can't act powerfully according to your will. So do you want to see the next verse? This is where the next verse is where the greatest secret of all, the supreme secret of yoga, is revealed. Do you want to see this? You really do? Do we have time? No? Okay, I don't need that. Not being overly dramatic as it is. Okay. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't read Sanskrit. Okay, and this is transliterated. It's not even the original, Devanagari. Okay, but the reason I have it like this is I want, if you can trust me on this, there is no verse in the Gita, and remember, I've been reading the Gita for 60 years. And there is no verse in the Gita that is as emphatic and as dramatic and as extraordinarily emotional as this verse. And I'm going to show you, because in Sanskrit, we don't have boldface, double strike, capital letters, emojis. We don't have that in Sanskrit. So if you're going to express it, you've got to say it. And I'm going to show you right now the drama of this verse. Okay? Here we go. It's color-coded. Sarvaguryatamam. The greatest secret of all. There's your super superlative. Now, if that were not enough, Bhuyashrinu. Once more, please hear. In other words, I've already been giving you this throughout the whole Gita, subtly. But now, it's on full display right here. Once more, please hear. If that were not enough, ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Me paramam vachaha. It is my supreme message. Can you imagine getting a text message that says this? I mean, this is a text message. It's a message in the text. Okay? So this is extraordinarily dramatic. And if this were not enough, ladies and gentlemen, then look at this. Quotation marks, which in some ways in Sanskrit is a way to underline. It's sort of Sanskrit's way of being emphatic. And what is between these quotation marks is very simple, and it's the ultimate message that Krishna wants to convey to Arjuna, and it's this. Simple. There's no small writing. This is not a divinity of judgment, of condemnation, of demanding reciprocation. This is not, he knows when you've been good or bad, so be good for goodness sake, all that kind of stuff. I'm not gonna ever lecture here again, because I have the worst.
This is confirmation.
Oh, okay. Oh, you hear it. Well, of course. You're ancient as well. Okay, good. Okay, so here it is, ladies and gentlemen. You are so much loved by me. There are no conditions on this. It's eternal. It's not dependent on whether you've been good or bad. It's there now. And the question is, can we appreciate it? The message of the Gita is that there is ultimately a loving universe that embraces us. Can we return the embrace? That's the challenge of the Gita. Can we return the embrace? Thereupon I shall continue declaring this message for you, which I have set forth into motion. There's the Sanskrit I put up there, sort of a decorative fashion. And then he says, and if you get a text message from a friend that says, come on over. He says, oh, that's very nice. What if you get a second one after that? It says, please come to the house. Okay, well, apparently he's pretty interested in having me come over. A third message, come to me, please. Krishna, in the course of a 2-hour dialogue, says, come to me no fewer than 22 times. 22 times. I promise this, for you are dearly loved by me, kind of reiterating the previous verse. And then, truly you shall come to me, for you are dearly loved by me. And then finally, completely relinquishing all forms of dharma. The very first word of the Gita is dharma. Now you can relinquish all of it. Just come to me. Look at that. That's the final come to me. As your only shelter. This is the return embrace. This is the secret of yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. Time for, open for comments, questions? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone can ask anything. Ask me anything about the Bhagavad Gita. Yes. What's your name, by the way?
Mario.
Mario.
Yes.
Good to meet you, Mario.
Nice to meet you as well. My question is, how do Arjuna and Krishna come together?
How they come together?
Yeah.
They're actually distantly related cousins, so they knew each other. But Krishna, well, there's a whole backstory about how Krishna decided to favor the Pandavas side of the war, and he chose to be on Arjuna's chariot. But those are details. Don't worry, we've taken care of all that, Mario. You just read what Krishna says to Arjuna, you'll be fine.
I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there is an interesting backstory that you can get into if you want to. Yeah, it's very interesting, very a little complicated, but it's very interesting stuff. But you are stepping into a story that has already begun. So, and in my introduction, I give a little bit of the background, a little bit more of the background, so you can read that. Yes, your name.
My name is Saurabh.
Swarup?
Saurabh.
Swarup.
Saurabh.
Saurabh.
Yes.
Ah, okay, I got it.
So
now.
how is your book different from the Gita as is?
Okay, so, like I said, I was using the Bhagavad Gita as it is in the classroom still use it, although this year I'm playing hooky, I'm on sabbatical, doing research, grant work. But I've been using Prabhupada's Gita, but I found that Prabhupada's Gita, that many challenged Prabhupada's Gita. So, I remember when I was teaching at Duke University, before I was teaching where I am now for 23 years, but right before that I was teaching at Duke University for 2 years. And I remember I was teaching a course on Indic traditions, and there were about 50 kids in the classroom. It was a rather full classroom. There was one tall fellow who would come into the classroom, sit in the back corner of the classroom, put his feet up on the desk next to him, lean into the corner, the corner of the room holds you up, right? And he would go to sleep. And of course the students kind of looked at me like, is this okay? I said, yeah, he doesn't get enough sleep. And I'm a little boring. You know.
Pass him?
So, what's that?
Did you pass him in the class?
Well, that's kind of personal now. But here's the point. So we get to Bhagavad Gita, and they're all like, assigned Bhagavad Gita as it is by my spiritual teacher. And suddenly, so every class, he gets in, he walks in, doesn't look at me, he just walks in like he owns the place, sits in the back, puts his feet up on the desk. Remember, this is a crowded classroom, not many seats to choose. But he puts his feet up, goes to sleep in the corner. No eye contact ever. I assign Bhagavad Gita as is, and suddenly his hand goes up. I go, welcome. Glad to see you're back. He said, I have a question, Professor. I said, yeah? This is like 1 year out of Harvard, right? I'm just fresh out of Harvard. And he said, I have a question. I said, yes. He said, why are you using the Bhagavad Gita of the Hare Krishna movement? What, do you think he was trying to embarrass me? It's no embarrassment. I said, that is an excellent question, and I'm glad you're listening today. That's great. You can get a Bhagavad Gita from me. Of course, I didn't have this out by then, at that time. I said, you can get a Bhagavad Gita from me, or you can get a Bhagavad Gita from somebody of my academic colleagues. But this is a Gita from someone who lives and breathes the Bhagavad Gita. And I think that's the best way to get into the Bhagavad Gita and understand it. Now, if you have any doubts about what's being said here on a technical, textual level, I'm your guy. Okay? Because I'm trained in Sanskrit, and I know what the Swami is saying here. Is that clear? And he said, okay, thank you. And he just put his legs back up on it. He may still be there for a while. So I don't know whether I passed him or not. So I was motivated to do this Gita. And many bhaktas have extended deep appreciation for what's being done here, because they bring out things that probably, you can write endless volumes on the Bhagavad Gita. So there's always the problem of what do you choose to write and what do you neglect to bring in. You can't bring in everything. So Prabhupada first started with the 350-page Gita, but he really wanted to do his 1,000-page Gita. So he finally did a 1,000-page Gita. But honestly, he could have done a 10,000-page Gita. So I've just added 300 pages. That's all. To help understand the 1,000 pages that he did. Was that good? Yeah. Yeah, I failed the guy. No, I didn't. I didn't. No. He actually probably did pretty good work. If people go to Duke, they know what they're doing. Yeah.
It sounds like the whole time that he was with his feet up and leaning, he was really listening. You know what I mean? Like, not really like.
It's interesting that you say that, because in the beginning of the semester, about 10 years ago, I told all the students, at that time, I used to teach large classes because I was one of those professors that could handle 150 people, right? So they gave me 150 kids to teach. And the reason I can handle it because I don't stand behind a lectern and I'm kind of predatorial. I kind of like go around, you know, people, the students are scared of me, you know. You don't believe that, do you? Okay, maybe they're not scared of me, but whatever. So I said, the beginning of the semester, I said, look, you may be tired, you may be, you know, upset, your hamster died, whatever. Come to class, because what I teach here is not necessarily in the text that I'm assigned. So I don't care if you're tired, bring your pillow, lie down in front. Well, the next class, a student came with his pillow, he laid it out right in front of me, and everyone was looking at me like, is that okay? I said, that's what I said. I said, you can do that, there's more room if anyone else wants it. So I gave my lecture for the hour, and then I said, any comments, questions? He didn't move, he was up like sort of lying down on his back, like as a corpse, you know? And then I said, any questions? And his arm went up without even opening his eyes or looking at me. And he asked a fantastic question. Later, he became one of my best students. I recommended him to Harvard and he got in. Full scholarship, which they didn't even give me. I'm still very upset about it. So, you know, teaching in the university has traumatized me, obviously. You can understand that, right? This is why I'm on sabbatical. I have to recoup, you know. No, but seriously, it's wonderful to see these students open up to the Gita's wisdom. It is wonderful. You don't have to be a Hindu, you don't have to be a practitioner, you don't have to be a bhakta, but so many people are inspired, even from a distant, you know, level of reading the Gita. What to speak of those who actually want to take up more of a life of yoga and bhakti. It's really quite amazing to see over the years. So it's one of my really enjoyable things of teaching. What was your name? I didn't catch it.
Yvette.
Yvette. Good. Thank you for that. Your name?
Tiffany.
Tiffany. Yes, Tiffany.
Do you end all your lectures with a peacock?
Oh, this is my pet, Peacock.
Oh. Like actually? Or are you joking?
Why do you have to ask me if I'm lying or
I
not?
must ask.
Just let me think about it as my pet, okay?
You got it.
You see, you're just gonna ask my wife, and
Yes, you
she
are.
always tells the truth, and I don't like telling the truth.
I can tell.
Yeah. At least about personal things like my pet peacock. I mean, look at this extraordinary bird. I mean, look at this creature. I mean, look at his hat. I love the hat. You don't even, we were staying down in the East Village. We were walking around. In these incredibly fashioned stores. They don't have a hat like this, you know, in the windows. It's amazing. Look at his hat. I just think it's wonderful. Yeah, Tiffany, did you ask me a question?
Yeah. You
Oh, about the peacock.
Yeah.
Okay.
You like half answered it. It was like a half joke, half lie.
Okay. Was that acceptable to you?
No, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, we're together on this, right, Tiffany?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Any questions? Any comments? Yes, your name.
Bhadra.
Bhadra.
Okay. You said 99 Kauravas?
Yeah.
I thought it was 100.
Yes, there were 100. They had one sister too.
Oh, but the sons.
Yeah, the
99 sons, one daughter.
And one daughter.
Yeah.
I feel sorry. Generally it's hard to have brothers if you're a daughter, but having 99.
I mean, was she
that's
involved in the battle?
What's that?
Was she involved in the battle?
No.
Okay, good. As she should.
No, she should not be. Especially with a dirty fighter brother. Yeah. Any other comments, questions about anything with the Gita, to do with the Gita? Tiffany, I've heard enough from you, really. No, I'm just kidding. Tiffany, that was unnecessary. Please, go ahead, yeah. Just don't ask about my peacock.
Okay, you got it.
Okay.
Are both of those yours?
Oh,
Both the red and the yellow version?
is there a yellow version? Oh, Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, okay, so that's Bhagavad Gita as it is, by Prabhupada, right here. And this is Bhagavad Gita, the Beloved Lord's Secret Love Song, by moi, okay? And
Good color choice.
you're welcome to take one or the other or both, however you want.
I was given the first one by
Okay.
Paul, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, well, then you're lacking this one. Any other final comments, questions?
Listen, when you mentioned about expanding on the Gita, you recall how in, I guess it was his last year present, one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada what book he was,
Oh, Pradyumna related, that's right.
and then he said, yes, I think I'll do Bhagavad Gita. And
Everyone's
but
looking
you've
around
already,
like,
you'd already done Bhagavad Gita, you can go.
there could be many more. That's right, that's right, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, good, thanks for reminding me of that. That's from Pradyumna recollecting that, that's right. Well-known little anecdote. Yes, your name.
I have a question.
Do you have a name?
Melissa.
Melissa.
Thank you. Is that historical? Like the battle, is this a story or is this a historical story? And when, if so, when, where? If you don't mind me asking.
The traditional the traditional view is that it is historical. It is something that occurred, but this is prehistorical, not prehistoric in the sense of dinosaurs, but it's before the historical eye can really know, like 5,000 years ago. Now, in scholars, they have a job. They got to come up with theories about this and that and the other. I don't listen to scholars. I'm supposed to be one.
Yeah.
But these kinds of historical speculations are unnecessary. The important thing is, if this were written yesterday, it's still worth reading.
Yeah, when was it written?
Oh, well, it would have been taken down at the time by Vyasadeva.
Okay.
Yeah, the
And
compiler of the Vedas.
And when was it, if you don't mind me asking another question?
Yeah.
When was it put together? It would have, but then it would have been translated maybe, or like when was it?
Well, it remained in the Sanskrit language. And then, of course, eventually it went into vernacular languages of India. And then in 1785, it was the first translation in English was done by Charles Wilkins in England. And that's nasty. In English are nasty people, the British. And so you got to get it over to America and use normal English. They spell color, C-O-L-O-U-R. Why is that necessary?
Yeah.
To extend the spelling? Have you heard them, how they talk too? See, we go over to England quite a bit.
If I should make fun.
Well, they betup. They don't care about the R's in the word, right? And then some of them drop the T's in the word. Because
they're better than us.
Yeah. One time, Krishnakanta and I were in a taxi going to Heathrow Airport. The nicest man you could ever imagine. He spoke the whole time for an hour, and I mouthed over to her. I said, "Do you understand?" She was. We didn't understand one word, but he was the nicest guy ever. So he was laughing until we knew to laugh. And then when he was talking, we knew to listen, and that was it. That was the whole conversation. I did not understand one single word he spoke, and it was English. That's why we came here. See, no one tells you that history. What's that?
New York.
To everywhere, to this country. Anyway, I'm now speaking in a field that I'm not authoritative on, honestly. Okay, I can only talk to you about Sanskrit. So yeah, the beginning of English translations was by Charles Wilkins, and then hundreds have been done since then. But what Bhagavad Gita transformed people's lives into practitioners of the Gita's philosophy. There you go. That's, just plain and simple. Historically, this is the Gita that transformed people's lives. That's why we're here. That's why this building's here. Because he came here and he delivered this.
May I ask another question?
There's only 2 as a limit, but we'll make an exception for you. Yeah, we'll make it, yeah.
So then your writing is from this, an understanding of it is from Sanskrit, it's from you reading Sanskrit, not English.
From Sanskrit and not what?
English. Your study of it and your writing is coming from your study of it in Sanskrit.
That's right.
Oh, okay, that's.
And the teachings of my teacher, who brings the teachings of his teacher, and then
Yeah.
the whole lineage, the whole tradition.
That's wonderful.
Who is
Yeah.
your teacher, by the way?
What's
I was
that?
gonna ask, who is your teacher?
The person who translated and wrote this one.
Oh,
Yeah, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
nice.
Yeah.
Right from the source.
Yeah, right from the source, that's right. Yeah, these two over here, they're right from that source too. Yeah.
The whole
They were also students of, are and were students of Prabhupada. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other, yes, name?
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Hi.
Hi.
So something that I've been a little confused about is when Krishna was telling Arjuna that he already told him the Bhagavad Gita before, after he was already explaining that it was passed on from the sun god.
Yeah.
Something that has been confusing me is if he told Arjuna the Bhagavad Gita before, is that him talking about reincarnation and?
A different life.
Yeah, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, Prabhupada has a lot of good commentary on that.
Yeah.
And so that's, definitely worth reading. Also, there are some lectures where Prabhupada also expands on that, that you can look up in the database, Yeah. But yeah, that can be a little confusing, But in fact, it's kind of eerie. Like, hey, I've given you this before,
Yeah.
billions of years ago, whatever, that kind of thing. But I think the essential message of this is that these things are not easy to absorb. Now, if Arjuna is having a hard time absorbing this, several lifetimes before, what are my chances? And honestly, I'll tell you that until I had to put down in print what is in here, I discovered things in the Gita that I never knew for 40 years. It was astonishing. My big fat ego going signing a contract with HarperCollins, which many of you may know is a huge world publisher. They said, so when will you deliver the manuscript? So big ego man here, the professor, Dr. Ego, said, Bhagavad Gita? I know the Bhagavad Gita, no problem. A year. Can you imagine the hubris? To be safe, I said a year and a half. Right? Because I know I can tend to be a little late on things. Well, it took me 4.5 years. Because I realized there was so much of the Gita I didn't know. Well, that was humbling. Obviously not terribly humbling. Be nice. Be nice. But no, it was an amazing process. And many people who practice yoga, like they practice asana yoga. And I asked once, an asana yogini, how many times have you practiced Tadasana? She said, oh my gosh, countless times. I said, how many times have you read the verses of the Bhagavad Gita? Oh, once. I said, well, there's the imbalance. These verses are meant to be practiced, just like asanas. You've got to read them hundreds of times. And even someone who'd been reading the Gita, hearing commentary on the Gita for decades, when finally having to translate it himself, discovered even new things. And even actually a few weeks ago, I discovered something even new about the Gita. It's just endless. The beauty of the Gita is endless.
It's eternal.
It is eternal and it's endless. So it needs to be practiced. And I recommend that one go through the verses of the Gita, and some of them may be a bit abstruse, a little bit not quite relatable, whatever, but when you hit one that is beautiful and speaks to you, recite it over and over and over in English, and if you can learn how to pronounce the Sanskrit, then that's good too. Practice the verses of the Gita the way you might practice the asanas. They're at least as deserving, if not more. Back there. Your name?
Phil.
Phil. Thank you. Go ahead.
So what about translating it or what in the process of translating gave you?
It's one thing to read it. You know, Prabhupada speaks about how Arjuna drank the teachings of the Gita through his ears. And it sounds funny, it's a metaphor, but it's very demonstrative of how active we need to be hearing, not passively. And I think I can fall into this like anyone else can. You read something maybe too passively, and you're not really paying attention to it. I mean, that's why you practice something, because not to achieve a state of monotony, but to achieve a state of greater and greater depth of understanding. So in translating it is a very intense form of drinking the Gita. It's very intense, because you have to figure out how to convey the feeling of the original into the target language. That's very hard. And as a scholar, and publishing it with such a big publisher, I'm kind of wearing a bullseye on my chest with academic colleagues who've challenged me on what I've said here. So it's something that, you have to be prepared to defend also. But it has not been hard for me to defend it. It's grounded in what Prabhupada has said. So it's that intense activity of translating verses. My poor wife knows that sometimes I could be, walking around the house aimlessly, repeating the verse in Sanskrit, wondering how I'm going to get it into English. Like a crazy man, right? Like okay, whatever. Okay, so it can be like a crazy person, right? But other translators may just kind of, academics that don't have a personal stake in it, or there are popularists that don't even know Sanskrit and they call it a new translation. How do you translate something you don't know Sanskrit? How do you? It's a mysterious process. But there are people that make a lot of money on the Gita because they put together the buffet of their 5 or 6 favorite translations, but that does not work. But I won't mention, the name, like Steve Mitchell. I won't mention his name. Can you erase that part of what's going on in this thing? Anyway, there are people that are popularist renditionists. They're not actually translations, and that's dishonest. It's a rendition. It's a creative. It's like Bhagavad Gita according to my imagination. Now that's fine, but just say it. Be honest about it. It is not a translation. It is not. So be careful what Gita you read. But this is the place to start. And if this is hard, well, pick mine up, and I guarantee you will appreciate Prabhupada's even more. Or your money, well, never mind. I'm not a businessman. I can't tell you money back. Yeah. Any other? Are we going too long here?
We can do kirtan,
Okay.
and then we can continue the discussion because we have prasadam afterwards.
Okay.
Prasadam and discussion afterwards.
I just wanted to ask what, like, the yoga that you were talking about, what does it mean? Like, how is that different from, like, what we know, like, what people are doing now?
Okay. Well, first of all, there are many. There was a slide in here that showed that 4 primary yogas that are talked about in the Bhagavad Gita. There are actually even others, like Buddha yoga. But suffice to say, by the way, do you have a name?
Vera.
Vera? Vera. So Vera, the ultimate yoga is the yoga of the heart. So Krishna's yoga is that he desires us. He loves us. He desires our love. Even though the divine is full and complete, there's one thing he doesn't have. He doesn't have Vera's heart. Or Garuda's. So it's the only thing we can offer. Once my son, when he was, 4 years old, it was my birthday that day, he came into my study. He stole a piece of paper from my printer. He stole a pen of mine, He stole other color pens of mine, and he wrote a birthday card and he gave it to me. And you know what I said to him? You know, you thief, how dare you take the materials from my, no, I didn't say that. Pharaoh, I'm not a cold man. It was the love that he gave, not the card itself. It was a medium to express the heart. This life is like the card. These bodies, did you ask to be born in your family? I didn't ask to be born in mine, I'll tell you that right now. Okay? Yeah. So the point is this, we find ourselves in these conditions with a lot of rumbling going on in our lives. I'm telling you, I'm gonna see a doctor after this. I've got it, Mount Sinai Hospital may have a place for me over there. Anyway, so Bear, it's the yoga of the heart. It's bhakti. It's the return embrace of a divinity who already embraces us. Have you ever hugged like a little kid, and you adored them, and you gave them a hug, and then they stood there like a wet fish? Just didn't do anything, didn't return your embrace? That's us. Or at least that's me. Maybe not you. But that's yoga. The return embrace is the ultimate yoga, and that's what you learn in the Gita. Oh, he talks about all the other yogas. All the Ashtanga yoga, Karma yoga, Jnana yoga, Dhyana yoga, all these yogas. Fine. Samadhi yoga, it's all there. The ultimate yoga is the yoga of the heart, bhakti. Does that make sense? Is it clear? Okay, good. Okay.
So now we'll do a short kirtan.
Sure.
And we usually do a stand-up, because I'm sure everyone's been good,
You leave it or do I?
whatever you...
Mama.
Now, all the chairs can come here to my right in the room. And then, I guess afterwards, anybody who would like a book can come and purchase one. I take one for myself, so sorry, I'm being greedy.
There are plenty, but we need more. There's more in the car.
Okay. How much are they?
I don't know what the temple wants.